This afternoon, a bill has been introduced in the Massachusetts state legislature banning law enforcement from wearing masks. One lawmaker co-sponsoring this bill is from right here in Western Mass.
And Western Mass News reporter Matt Price is live in the studio tonight with more details. Matt, what can you tell us?
Well, Chris and Amanda, we can tell you that Democratic State Representative Carlos Gonzalez is saying he has been frustrated with many of these ICE raids in Massachusetts and nationwide, especially when it comes to agents who approach people while masked or disguised. Now, he and at least one of his colleagues are looking to do something about it. This new bill, put forward by fellow Democratic State Representative James Hawkins, calls for the ban of mask wearing by all law enforcement in the Bay State following recent instances in the Commonwealth showed individuals being placed into custody after being approached by masked agents. In recent weeks, ICE agents have been seen in several areas across the Bay State, including Springfield, Amherst, Great Barrington, Milford, Chelsea, and Boston. Gonzalez telling Western Mass News one of the bill's main goals is to make sure there is public trust between the public itself and law enforcement.
It's unnecessary to be able not to identify yourself. It could cause a huge conflict between our municipality police officers, our state police officers, when and if they are called that somebody is being attempted to be kidnapped with people that are masked.
Gonzalez telling us the bill is in the discussion phase, so it will be a while before there is any potential movement. We will have more from the representative as well as from Representative Hawkins in a full report on Western Mass News at 6 o'clock. For now, reporting live in the studio, Matt Price, Western Mass News.